was a lot of stuff. Yeah, I had some like health issues. I had to apply for health care and do a lot of stuff like on my own in a new state and learn like how all of that would work, and also kind of navigate. So I wanted to live on campus as long as possible because I just felt like that would be smartest. The campus is very big and it's in like an urban area, so I felt it'd be safer, more convenient, cheaper, not cheaper, but like for I guess right now college budget cheaper to like full, room and board into tuition. So I tried to stay on campus as long as possible. And then at the end of my second year, I was sitting in the financial aid office, and the financial aid guy was like, "You can't afford this. You have to move out or drop out." I was like, "Wow, okay." So I had to make a whole lot of really fast decisions about where I was gonna live, who I was gonna live with. Thank God that all worked out because it actually ended up being like a whole miracle where a family that knew Robin through a friend that she went to college with on the other side of the state happened to live in Pittsburgh where I was going to school, and they took me in for that whole year for free, and it was crazy. But there was a lot of like just me relying on God, and he always delivered, which amen, that's the best part of God. But it's like there was a lot of before the delivering part where it was very scary and very stressful. So my health declined because of stress, and then the health declining caused more stress. So there was just a lot of issues that came from me being in school. Sometimes I feel like it wasn't the healthiest decision for me to go to school all the way out there, and yeah, it's a lot. But the best part, I guess, was I think the best part was whenever I did like decide to grow where I was planted. So whenever my first year of school, I decided, whenever I ended high school, I decided that I wanted to recommit my life to Christ and not be worried about like what other people thought of me, because I knew going to a public school that would not be so easy, and I knew that like there was a whole stigma, like you said, of like good girls gone bad in college, like everything kind of unravels because you're no longer under the umbrella of your family and your parents and stuff. So I remember very clearly the moment I like was praying that summer, like, God, don't let me like spiral out of control in college. That would not be my idea of a good time. So then I think that, I guess, made it more evident to me that I needed to find a church home. So one of my like first objectives starting college was to find a church. So I did a lot of church hopping the first couple months, and then when I finally settled on a church, I sat down and was talking with my pastor. Shout out to Pastor Wallace. And he was very clear about growing where I was planted, because he thought that from our talks that I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out as far as college and Pittsburgh and everything was concerned. And I probably was. So I made the decision, like, I'm going to try to, like, be all in. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. If God has me here, then it's where I'm supposed to be, so I'm going to make the most of it. And I think from that decision, a lot of doors were open that I would not have even, like, thought of seeking. And also, I made a lot of great, I guess, relationship building moments with family at my church. That church was great, and I miss that church, and I want to go back. But that was a really good, I guess, period in my life spiritually. College was. So I think that was the best part, because all the like hard stuff only like kept pushing me closer to God. And I think sometimes I didn't want that. Sometimes it was so hard that I was thinking like maybe the common denominator is that I'm focusing too much on church instead of my schoolwork or something like that. Or maybe because I'm trying so hard to continue a prayer life and waking up early to do my devotionals that it's like costing me in like the sleep department or something. So a lot of temptation to like, pull out of my relationship with God was there. But thankfully I held on, and it paid off always. It was never like the right decision to, read the word less or, pray less. So Yeah.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because I mentioned earlier that you guys grew up in a Christian household, and again, just following stereotypes. Usually, kids who especially like PKs, pastors' kids, they grow up. And not that you guys were pastors' kids, but your mom is a deacon or elder at the church. And you guys were heavily involved in the church. It was kind of one of those things. If we go into church, y'all going to church too. And most kids would hate that. And as soon as you get that first inch of freedom, it's like, especially going off to college, it's like I don't have to wake up on Sunday because my parents are telling me work up. I have to do it if I'm going to discipline myself. And so you've kind of spoke about how it became real for you. What about you, Grace? Is that when did it become real for you? Or even, and that's the other thing too, it's like I don't want to make the assumption that, hey, because everybody else in my family is a Christian, that I'm a Christian too. Like, how was navigating that? Because it sounds like going to college was a difficult time for you. And I think everybody goes through trials, whether you're a believer or an unbeliever. The question is it going to make you run away from God, or is it going to make you run to Him? And so oftentimes people run further away from Him. How is that for you? When did your faith just become yours, or are you still struggling with that,
So because I went to a Christian school, I feel like it did get it took a little longer for it to become my faith in that regard, because now I'm by myself. This is something that belongs to me and not just something that I was raised with. Because Messiah College really does emphasize people participating in church and church-like activities. It's hard for me to sometimes discern that, but I think, as I was talking before about having a rough first year and that snowballing, the hard part helped me make my relationship real, because there was a part where I was really, I said angry before, but I guess angry. I'm still trying to decide if it was angry or just questioning God, but I remember I was sitting in my room and I was crying because I felt like I was very lonely, and I had looked back on other periods of my life, and I was thinking, without my family, I didn't really feel like my friends were super connected to me. We understood each other on a level that a mutual level. And so that up until I think sophomore year was when it happened, when I was just really upset at God, and I knew I didn't want to go to bed angry at God. I was like, there's no way that's happening. But I was questioning a lot of things, and I was like, all right, well, the one thing I need to do is find something that I know about God so that I can go to sleep and not be so angry, and so that I can get some peace and calm down. And I really just remember I know God is real because of this and something that happened in my family, or I know God is real because of this and something that one of my friends told me. I was like, who am I to discount ways that they've seen God, because I haven't seen Him that way. So I was like, okay, if I combine all these, I know that God is real. So great, now I can go to sleep. And I woke up the next morning and someone had written me a note that was hey, I just want to let you know that God loves you. And I don't even know why that was. I think it was because we were doing Secret Sister or something. Secret Sister? Yeah, there was Secret Sister on the floor or something. And so it might have been a random passing of notes that way, or maybe someone just passed it around to everyone in the floor, or I don't know. But I think that was the first moment I was like, wow, this is something that I have to do for myself. This is something that I need to seek after myself. So, yeah.
No, and like I said, it's super unique because from my perspective, didn't go up in a Christian household, but right around the time God started working on my life, I feel like He was working on my parents' life as well. Because we would go to church, so even though I say I didn't grow up in a Christian household, we did go to church, but it was just something that we did on Sundays. Wasn't super involved or anything like that. We just went, and just by God's grace, I happened to hear the gospel. Some things transpired along that path where God was definitely tugging on my heart. But once I came to embrace the gospel, and I realized the church we were at was not a really doctrinally sound church. It was weird having that conversation with my parents, because I'm the kid,
right.
Telling me, hey, you probably need to go to a different church. But I think God was definitely with us, because I think my mom was feeling the same way too. It was, very, health and wealth kind of gospel, and it just weighed on me. And they actually found, I don't know if you guys have heard of C.J. Mahaney, a Sovereign Grace church, or Joshua Harris. I don't know if you've heard of any one of those.
Joshua Harris, maybe.
Yeah, I think he, Kiss Dating Goodbye, I think is one of, I don't know.
Oh, I've heard of that.
So that's a Sovereign Grace church. So they ended up finding a Sovereign Grace church, going to that, and been going there ever since. And so it's just crazy to see the dynamic flip that I'm now married to someone who did grow up in a Christian household, and made her faith her own. And not only that, but the rest of her sisters too. It's like, man, as much as we, I don't want to make it seem as if we're being critical of your parents, but it was just your experience that they were kind of overbearing. It seemed to, hate to sound pragmatic, but work. As much as you can like be annoyed at it, or be like saying stupid is a bad word, or can't say vomit, or so I know you have to bleep this when your mother hears it. But as silly as it may sound to the viewers, you see how they were able to raise. Because that's the other thing too. It's like, we're listening to you guys' story, and it's almost as if, and I don't want to say you haven't had to endure much because you had your own set of trials, but just especially coming where you come from, you hear about the teenage pregnancies, you hear about the drugs, you hear about all the crazy stuff that you guys seem to be very shielded from. And as for people from the outside looking in, me like, you guys are kind of green, but what's wrong with that? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because you don't have to deal with all the craziness that other people have to deal with, because I think people are fueled off of drama. And that has definitely not been a testament of you guys' life. Again, from an outsider's perspective, I've always seen you guys as rich, because we often put wealth in just material things. And, scripture talks about being, rich in joy, rich in peace. And not that everything has been easy. We kind of talked a little bit about it, but just financially, everything hasn't always been there. But there's never been a time where I've seen, and again, from my perspective, I've never seen your parents argue. I've never seen them get upset. I've never, ever seen that. I've always seen peace. I've always seen their faith be rooted, And I think so many people don't have that. And so many people don't value what true wealth is, and seeing it there. So that, I don't know, just again, from an outsider's perspective looking in, I think it's phenomenal, because I want to have a lot of kids, and I want to learn from people who have done it well. And there's certainly things you can take, and certainly things that you may, I might not do it that way, but it's one thing to be critical of it, because look how you guys turned out, Still turning, still turning. But staying with the college thing, you guys kind of talked on it briefly, and I think it's just very interesting, the majors that you guys decided to pursue. I know for me, I got a biblical studies degree, and I don't know, I'll just be frank, it's pretty useless. And nobody cares about a biblical studies degree. I can't do anything with that. I think it was great because I came from, biblical and theological ignorance, so it gave me some knowledge. But as far as practicality, nobody's I want somebody who's got a BS in biblical studies. Nobody cares about that. And not to say that's the case with you guys, but these, maybe yours is a little bit more practical, Lillian, but what made you want to go into that field, and what do you see yourself doing with it?
Okay, so my major of anthropology was a complete surprise to me. That came in junior year, so that part aside, I wanted to do interpretation for the deaf from high school, because, well, it's a whole weird line of things that happened, because in kindergarten my teacher was deaf, and I didn't even know that until my mom told me after a PTO meeting where she saw that she had hearing aids. But she spoke to us, and I had no idea. Mrs. Chips, shout out to you, taught me sign language for the first time. But yeah, she so basically Yeah, Robin didn't even know. So basically, she showed me a cartoon adaptation of a Helen Keller story, and I was like fascinated that people could talk with their hands and like communicate visually and not verbally. I just thought that was really cool. So fast forwarding some. I asked my teacher then, like, could you show me how to sign like the alphabet? That was it. Then fast forwarding, I like continued very like surface levels kind of study of sign language. Like here and there I would pick up some words on YouTube or watch some videos. We used to look at Bill Vickers videos on YouTube and learn some like songs and things. And then in high school I met a girl at a friend's church function who was deaf, and she went to residential school, so she was just visiting. But she the church didn't provide any sort of like help for her. Like there was no one interpreting the sermons, or there was no one who knew sign there except her mother. And so she was there visiting for the whole summer. And I remember when we first met, it was like an accidental thing because she dropped a napkin and I like gave it to her and she signed thank you, and I just happened to know like you're welcome from my random YouTube searches. And so she got super excited, but then like quickly realized that was all the sign language I knew. So well, all the helpful sign language. So then she had a tablet and we were talking on there. I was just like picking her brain, like, why do you come back here? Like, do you enjoy being here? It's very nosy. I was like, nobody signs to you, like, isn't that lonely? And she was like very open. She was telling me that she just enjoyed worshiping with her family and being at the church she grew up in. And if she only got to see her parents a small amount of time out of the year, it was worth not knowing what all that was going on. And so I was like, wow, that's beautiful, but also very sad, because I felt like so many more people could communicate to her. Like people could just learn sign language. So then I was like, I should do that. And then I did like deeper research from that point and found that yes, you can actually major in it, study it in school, get a certification to interpret. So I said, well, why not? So I decided to do that. And then the school that I ended up going to didn't have it as a major. The ones that I got into where that was an option were far too expensive. But I did what I could, so I saw that there was a certificate program, so I did that, which is like between a major and a minor. So I did the certificate, and then I needed a major, but I realized I didn't care about anything except sign language, so I wanted to pick something that overlapped with the certificate. So for the first year and a half, I had no program except this sign language certificate. And then my advisor was like, you actually do need to declare something. So you need a degree. So I picked linguistics just because a lot of the requirements matched. Little did I know that linguistics is science, and so it was far, far beyond my capacity for understanding. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was stuck. So because I declared late, so I was on the linguistics track, just barely hanging on a lot of times, doing a lot of like courses I didn't care about, just to fulfill the checklist and all that. But I was really excited about the sign language parts, so that was all I was hanging on to, was like, I'm doing this major because of the sign language, that's all. Even though a lot of linguistics doesn't even really overlap. So it just a lot of times it felt like I was making a mistake, so I was just kind of sitting there pondering at the beginning of every semester, like, am I still supposed to be in this major? Like, really? And then I accidentally, so my first semester of college, I was in a intro to cultural anthropology class, and that was just because it was a gen ed, and that was like my favorite professor ever. And so I ended up taking like all of his other courses except one throughout my whole college career, and I did a directed reading with him my last semester, and that was amazing. And basically that professor like saved my college career, because he was like, why don't you just join our club, be an anthro? And I was like, okay. So I did anthropology as my major and dropped linguistics as a minor, so that I didn't have to do the hardest class, because it was the worst. Like, don't ask me what I got in that class. So then I switched my little major minor program, and then so I come to find out that the pairing of anthropology and linguistics is not that uncommon, and a lot of people do anthropology with some type of understanding of linguistics and use it to understand how language impacts culture, vice versa. So my like thesis thing for my directed reading was about Black American users of sign language, and that was a really cool like crossover that I never saw coming. But my professor really loved it, and he like it was a whole line of other miracles, because he was like, if I design like a graduate course, would you come back and do this and do that, and if I pay for this, would you do that? And I was like, wow, let's not do that right now, but thank you. So that ended up being another cool like opportunity that was there. And then just knowing that the networking I'd done in Pittsburgh from all of the time I spent in the sign language program could be useful should I return to Pittsburgh for career prospects and things like that. So that's basically my next step now, is to go to an interpreter training program, which is typically 2 years, optionally an associate's degree sometimes, and then you kind of, from there, you're equipped to take the certification exam to interpret. So then I would apply for that, take that exam, and then upon passing, be able to interpret sign language as a career. And I want to do it on a more lecture type level, not so much doing it for like a doctor's office, but because that's actually another level of training to learn the medical terms, but more so for like conferences, if there's like a large group of people to be able to sign and stand in the front and do the translating. But yeah, that's basically what I want to do.
What about you, Grace?
Okay, so I said before I'm majoring in German, and I kind of decided to major in it sort of out of nowhere. I grew up, so where we grew up was very Spanish heavy, and so a lot of friends that I made spoke Spanish, so I picked up, we both picked up a lot of Spanish from that. And I was really interested in the classes that I was taking in elementary, middle, high school. I think I first learned Spanish when I was in kindergarten. I learned to count to I want to say 20, but I also feel like it might have been more than that when I was younger. And it was in kindergarten. I remember the prize was a piece of candy, so I was like, yes, candy. But I think I was so interested in learning Spanish that it sort of fueled my desire to learn it for K through 12th grade. But then actually around 12th grade, I was like, now what if I learned another language? Because there was a summer previously during Upward Bound where I took a class called Word Power, and it was basically just learning some basic Latin and Greek, and I was like, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. Everybody else in the class hated it, but I liked it. And I was like, well, what if I learn another language? And I was like, I can't really learn Latin because it's dead, and I'm not about to go to school for a dead language. Which, some people still did, which is, more power to you. But I was like, okay, well then what if I learn Italian, which is its close cousin? You see we're getting further from German here. But I had looked up all the schools that I looked into were either, first of all, Upward Bound made me apply to 5 schools. I didn't want to do that because there are only 2 schools that I actually wanted to go to. Messiah College and Williams out in, what was that, Massachusetts? Yeah. All the way up there. And that was really expensive. So the reason I wanted to go to Williams because they had an Italian, I think they had an Italian program there. But it was so expensive. And I think I was put on the waiting list for Williams. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Messiah. And I had already been on campus, and I was like, well, let's just pretend I'm majoring in German. So I went there for that. Let me backtrack. Sorry, I'm really bad at telling stories. But somewhere in the middle, in 12th grade, I was learning German on my own. I decided to learn another language on my own. And I was learning Italian on my own for a little bit, and then I started getting it confused with Spanish in class. I was like, wow, I can't do that. I have to pick something that's not at all, it's not so closely related to Spanish. So I picked German because I was like, if there's anything I want to major in as a language, it has to be either Italian or German or Spanish. And I started learning German on my own through this app called Duolingo, and it was really cool because I was like starting to like think in German. It was very basic stuff, but I was starting to think in German, and so I went to Messiah to go visit, just to see how the campus was, and what did I do? Oh, so we had to sit in the class for whatever major we were going to be in, and I think it was a 201 class, and the professor, Dr. Beanie, he asked me some question about, like, what's a food that you eat? And I was like, I can answer this because I know a whole bunch of German food. So I said Zitrone, which means lemon. And he was like, yeah, that's right. And I was like, wow, I just spoke in a college classroom and I didn't mess up. So good job. And then, I don't know, I think after that it was sort of just like, I guess this is what I'm going to do now.
Which is so profound. So I stick to my guns. Urban soul be the sound and y'all do it. What you talking about? Got me walking out. They ain't saying jack. Never paying back. Hustle in a hearse. Money be the worst. Be your equal. See the people waiting for the purse.